Right, so we have a file to download for today. So just head on over to Learning Suite and download census.xlsm. And this will be the data that we come up. This is some data I downloaded. It must be old now because I have done this example a long time. It's a really fun example. But this is data the way the Census Bureau gives it out. Here you go, have some data. And this is just great. So I gave you a clue in the name of the file that it's census data, but somebody look at this data and tell me something about it. You know, I want to say something interesting, but that interesting might be too high of a bar. Tell me something about this data. Something about this data that doesn't apply to all data. Go ahead. You're getting too ambitious. You said something already. Sorted by column A. Okay, so these things are in order by column A. Good. We may come back to you. Comment here. It's all okay. So it's all numeric. Well, it's not all numeric. Row 1's not numeric. Okay, so you think we've got some variable names here. That's what you're going to say. It looks like variable names. Okay, so when you say variable name, here's one that's age 29 or 290, 208. So somebody tell me what does this mean? What does that number right there mean? This worksheet tells you the answer to that. I'm wanting you to find it. So take a minute and figure that out. It really is here. How many of you are still working on actually getting the data down? A few of you? Okay, so I'm interested. Actually, I don't want to know about I5. I want to know about M5 because that says sex. That sounds more interesting. Whatever age was. So what is M5? Someone tell me what M5 is. This is going to be a pretty common thing. Someone will give you a file like this, you know, and ask you for some input. Now, let's suppose your supervisor gave you this file and said, listen, I need to know whatever analysis I need here. You know, I need something from this. And what are you going to go? Back to him and say, hey, just explain to me what all this means? Is that your first step? Should you do that? You better not do that if this file can tell it by yourself. Go ahead.
So M5 is the percentage of total females in that.
Okay, so what you're telling me is that all of column M is the percentage of females. Now I'm looking at this and that looks pretty good to me. I mean, not knowing anything else, now that you've mentioned that, I look at these and I go, oh, 50, 51, 51, these are all really close to 50%. 51%, 54%, 49%. So this could be a gender percentage. And you're saying you're pretty sure about that, presumably because you found the key here somewhere. Okay, so you told me all of column M, now someone tell me about M5. Anyone gonna, M5, go ahead. Right, okay, so now what we're saying is that column M, all of this is information, this whole column is percentage of females, and then row 5 is all of this information is about Baldwin, Alabama. And so when we look at that intersection between M and 5, that's percentages of female for Baldwin, Alabama. So, you know, if we knew the next row down, well, actually the next row up I think is Barber, Alabama. And, you know, so that's percentage of female for Barber, Alabama. Okay. So, right, we've got a couple other tabs here that are helpful. We've got a data dictionary, and that tells us what each of these different variable names actually means. There's an English language description of what that variable name means. And then the next one over is what are all these different rows? You'll notice here that I've highlighted row number 936, Gov County, Kansas. That's my county. There it is, Gov County. Okay, and then there's some other information here, data flags. I don't know what this is. It just comes, there's probably some footnotes somewhere. So if I look over here, we won't work with this data today, but Z3 is a 7. The flags dictionary is 7 means suppressed, does not meet publishing standards. Oh, so if I was to actually go look at Z3 in the actual data, I got a 0. That isn't really a 0. That number is actually suppressed. Sorry. Whatever the number is, we don't have the standards for that. And there is some things, like if there's like too few people that respond or in that category, they just won't publish it because they figure, oh, you could figure out who these people are or something. And then there's footnotes and some text and footnotes. I don't know how the footnotes work. With a little work, we can figure that out. Generally, looking at the data set here, generally, what do you think? Is this easy data to work with or not so easy data to work with? It's not so easy. It's not terrible, but it's really not very easy. I mean, if you're going to say, let's say that what you need to do is you have to compare 3 or 4 different counties across different dimensions. I want to say, all right, I got to compare one county to, let's say I got to compare counties in northern Utah. Oh, I want to kind of get a picture of how does Utah County compare to Salt Lake County? How does that compare to Weber County? Davis County. Is that where Weber is? Is Weber? That's another county, Weber County and Davis County. We got 4. We got to look at these, and kind of compare them to each other. This data, it's not really, the data is here, but it's not really ready to be a tool to kind of help us work with comparisons. So our goal today is to get some familiarity with working with ranges. And sometimes, the truth is, I could teach you more about working with ranges if we just kind of went through a bunch of different disconnected examples. We could cover more ground. And sometimes we'll take that approach, but it's nice every once in a while to do an example where we say, you know what, we built something today in class, like in an hour, we built something really useful. And we learned some stuff along the way, and that's what we're going to take today. So we're going to build a tool that allows us to compare these different counties really quite easily. So let's go ahead and, first of all, is anyone still trying to get the file? Everyone got the file? Anyone need help? All right, I'm going to start off by making a new tab, and I'm going to drag this new tab all the way to the left. Doesn't really matter where you put it. That's just help me to remember where I've put it. And why don't I call this compare? So this is my compare sheet. And what I'd like to do is, the critical thing here is that I'm going to need to know, when I'm looking at this data, I got to know what county it is, and I got to know what the variables are. So let's start off just by bringing the variable names over. So I'm just going to take column B from my data dictionary, and I'm going to copy and paste that into column A of my compare sheet. And I'm going to get rid of item description, but I'll leave the rest of the stuff right where it is. So this will tell me, so that if I can actually get the data plugged in over here, then I'll be able to say, that number is the county code. That number is the total resident population in July of 2008. Well, it's an estimate for 2008. So I don't know when this data came out, somewhere around 2008 apparently, because that's the highest number I see here. Okay, so now my idea is I want to put all the data for one of the counties I'm comparing here, and I want to put all the data for another county I'm comparing right here, and maybe another one and another one. In fact, as many as you want to compare to, line them up. We'll see them there. Which means I need some way to pick counties. Any idea on how we should let we need some way for the user to tell us, this is the Utah County. I want to compare Utah County. Bring in the data for Utah County. How should we let the user tell us that? Yeah, go ahead. Okay, one would be an input box. We write some code that somehow we run the code and it puts up a box that says, tell us the name of the county that you want to compare. Now, for that to work, the user is going to have to type in something that we can figure out. And the problem with letting the user type something in, who knows what they're going to type in. They'll type in something crazy. Now, depending on how good we are at coding, we might do a pretty good job of trying to figure out what they meant, but we're not going to trust them to type it in right. We're going to say, just go get that county. So input box would work. There's a lot of padding of the walls we'll have to do to make the input box effective. Okay, in the back. So we could use a drop-down list like a data validation. Okay, let's take a look at that. That's a pretty good solution. It's not the one we're going to choose, but it's a pretty good idea. So what I could do here is I could say, all right, I'm going to come here into cell A1, and I'll come to my data tab. Don't do this along with me because we're not going to do this. I just want to show it. Is this a reasonable approach? I'm going to come over here to data validation. Any value, not any value. I want a list. Where are you going to get the list from? I'll come over here to the source. and come to my county names. And this is the one thing that I've kind of already pre-done for you. The Census Bureau did not do this part for us. I've given you one column that joins the other two columns over here. So I could just say, great, just take this list right here. And now user can drop down this list. You can just pick one off this list. That's the one we want. Or that's the one we want, or whatever. So yeah, we don't have to worry about the user typing in something wrong here because they can pick. We know what the set is, and they can pick what the set is. So very nice. Now, what this means is that we would need to be able to say, once they've given us this value, Cherokee, Alabama, Cherokee, Alaska? Is that Alaska? I think that's Alaska. No, AK, that's Alabama. Okay. Cherokee, Alabama. Then to be able to pull the data, we've got to convert Cherokee. So that means we'd have to come back here to county names. We'd have to actually find Cherokee here. It won't be too bad. Once we find it here, we've got to go and get the code because that's the code that we'll have to look up in this column to say that's the data we want for Cherokee County. What's that? Oh yeah, so we could use a VLOOKUP in there, kind of speed things along. So this is, and I said this is a possibility. This would work. It's got a little more kind of work to do afterwards than I want to do. So we'll take another approach. I don't know the next one. I wouldn't expect you to come up with. But if someone has another alternative, go ahead and suggest it. Okay, so I'm going to introduce to you a new approach. I'm going to come to my developer tab, and I've got a group on this developer tab called controls. And so here in the controls group, there's this little insert. It looks kind of like a little lunch box. I mean, that's a toolbox. It's probably a toolbox with some tools next to it. I always wonder why there were tools next to the lunch box, or why there was a lunch box at all. It's a toolbox. Excellent. Okay. And so we've got these different kind of controls, and it seems like a strange thing, but we're going to just put these controls right on the worksheet. It's like, they're not even going to be like in a cell, they'll just be kind of floating above the worksheet, like magic. And this first one is the button. We may use that today, it depends on how things go. But this next one is called the combo box. And that's the one we're going to use. I do want you to do this along with me. So I'm going to take the combo box, and I'm just going to kind of click and drag to draw that combo box in here. Why doesn't it have to be all that big? So now I've got a combo box. It doesn't do very much right now because I haven't configured it. But if I scroll away, that's like stuck to the worksheet at that point. You can even see this one. I've kind of got it overlapping two different cells. So maybe I'll just put it up here. Right-click it, and then I should be able to drag it up a little bit. Doesn't really matter where you put it, but maybe I do want it down a bit. I don't know. Okay, but I will right-click it, and I'm going to choose assign, not assign macro. I'm going to choose format control. So right-click format control, and we need to do a couple of things here. So one is the input range. This says, where are you going to get the data for the list? We've got to have a list to drop down when they click on that. Where's the data coming from? Really similar to what we did when I showed you configuring the data validation. So I'm going to go ahead and do that same thing. I'll come to input range. So I've got that highlighted. I'll come down here to my county names, and I'll select this whole column of data. Just control down arrows, getting that whole thing. Yeah. So the comment is, your developer tab doesn't have the controls group?
Well, I've got that.
Oh. Excellent. I know exactly what happened. So the question is, I came to format this control, and that's not there. Okay. I don't know exactly what happened. I think I might know what happened. Let's take a look. I'm going to come back to my lunchbox here, my toolbox, and there are actually two different drop-downs here, two different combo boxes. The top one is, these are form controls. These kind of come from the world of VBA forms. We're going to get real familiar with forms. The second one these are ActiveX controls. The ActiveX controls generally don't look as good as the form controls, and they're more configurable. They're a little more powerful. So we're going to do the form control one. And is that what happened? You took the other one? Oh, good, because if it wasn't that, I would have had no idea. Yes, question here. Okay, the question is, can I zoom in? And the answer is, can I zoom in a little? And the answer is no, I can't zoom in a little, but I can zoom in a lot. Okay, so yeah, what we did was we clicked on the insert. It said, what do you want to insert? I chose this first control here, or this combo box in the form controls. And then I clicked and dragged to draw this, then right-clicked it and said format control. That's where we are. Oh, I think hey, format control, come back here. Then I think I also went to the input range, and I said, let's go get the input range on my county names, and I chose this whole thing. So we're on column, Control-Shift-Up arrow. We're on column D. Okay, so that defines the list that's going to happen in the drop-down list. Now, the next thing is the cell link. So here's the thing that's different from the data input or from the data validation. That data validation just says, hey, what's the list? You got to put something in this list, and we'll even help you by letting you choose it. And so here, this combo box says, great, here's a list. What you choose it from the list, but now it says, we're going to put the information about which one you chose into the cell of your choosing. You can put it where you want to. Let's put it in A1. I'm just going to come here and put it in A1. We can control how many lines drop down. Maybe I want more. Maybe we'll put 20 there. I don't know. Ooh, 3D shading. Now that is fancy. I don't know. That's probably more than I can handle on the first time. I'm going to leave the 3D shading up, but feel free to put on 3D shading. And I'll say, OK. Now, I'll click. You'll notice right now it's kind of selected. I got these little handles around it. You can use that to change the size of it and drag it around, whatever. I'm going to click off of it. And now when I click back on the little drop down, it brings that list in. Here's that whole list. Seems to be way wider than it needs to be for this list, but there it is. And I'm going to pick one of them. Let's go find Kansas. H-I-J-K. Where's Kansas? I don't want to spend too long looking for Kansas. Kentucky, Kansas. We're getting close to my county. I passed my county. Ah, Gov, Kansas. All right. So it has put in here 936. That's great. What does it mean? Actually, that's almost the population of Gov County, Kansas. Really, it's like less than 1,000, kind of close to 1,000. What's that? Is that the row number that Gov County, Kansas is on? And the answer is yes, but that's not why it puts 936 there. That seems bizarre for me to say, yeah, that's the row number, but that's not why. That's got some kind of bizarre coincidence. Yeah, it's the number in the list, right? Yeah, so it's actually the number in the list. This is the 936th element in the list. It doesn't know anything about really where the data came from, but because this data happens to start in row number 1, it's also the row number. So yeah, it's just the 936th entry in this. So if I come back here and drag all the way up here to like Barber, Alabama, that should be 5, right? That's the one we talked about before, row number 5, or entry number 5 here in the list. Okay. Whew. Now I'm ready for a little bit of VBA. What do I want to do now? As soon as the user chooses that, what do I want to have happen? What do you want to have happen? Yeah, we really hope that as soon as the user chooses that, class gets dismissed. That's what we really hope for. But when the user gets that, I heard it over here. Yeah, just bring the data in. You just picked Barber, Alabama, boom, drop in the Barber, Alabama data. That's what we want to have happen. So why don't we go ahead and create a sub-procedure that will do this for us. So I'm going to bring up my VBA code window. And I'm probably going to come, since our code is large here and you're a little more familiar with this interface, I'm going to come out of Zoom mode. I'm going to insert a module. And now I'm ready to make a sub-procedure. What should we call it? It should be descriptive about what this is doing. So what should we call this? So the comment is get county data. That's pretty good, but to me, when I say get data, I'm bringing it from somewhere outside of the workbook. Maybe I'll just call it place county data. Place county data. Now we have a couple of options here. One is, and I think this is the way I want to do it, is I want to actually make a parameter. We talked about parameters before. Anyone can want to venture a description of what a parameter is? And you'll notice I stopped right here after putting one of these parentheses in here, the opening parenthesis. Oh, yeah, so you just more encompassing than a statistic. You gave me like the data definition of parameter. Excellent. But that's I'm looking for the programming definition of a parameter. Yeah? It's a variable that I declare in these parentheses where I'm making the sub-procedure. That's right. And it gets its value when? When the procedure is called. So let's do that here. So I'm going to place county data, and I need to tell me, just tell me the row number that has the county data. So I'm just going to call this row num as a long integer. So now the idea is if I call this, and I can just practice now from the immediate window by saying place county data, and I want to give it a row number of like 5. That should be Baldwin. And when I execute this, then this value 5 will go into this variable. Remember, this variable is the location in memory that has a name. So this is, we're going to put somewhere in memory the value 5, and we'll be able to pull that value back by referring to this as row number. So let me just debug.print row number. It's not a very exciting procedure, but right now if I hit enter on this line in my immediate window, it should just print what? In the immediate window, it should print 5, yeah, because all I did was I assigned a variable, I gave a value to a variable, and now I'm just printing off the value of that variable. All right, so now what I'm really hoping to do is figure out how am I going to get, with the row number that I'm providing, how am I going to get all those values? In fact, even before that, I want to put in here, I want to put Alabama and Baldwin. So let's just do that first. What I'd like to do is I would like to put right here in column, in cell B1, I want to put Alabama when someone gives me a 5. Talk me through it. What am I going to do? Anybody? Give me a clue. What sheet should I be paying really close attention to? Go ahead.
Well, if you could activate county names, just go to row 5, and then you can like select cell, like third cell to the right.
Okay. So what you're saying is, come to my county name sheet, find row 5, and then I want to put in that right there, just a state abbreviation. I guess I said Alabama. I don't really want the whole name of Alabama, just the abbreviation would be good. Yeah, okay, so I like it. Now, the one thing you said that I didn't care for was you said select this sheet. Now, it turns out that every time I select a sheet, I'm causing the whole screen to update. It's going to change to a different sheet. That may not seem like a very intensive thing to do, but updating the screen is really intensive. Folks, if you said, you know what, I'm going to buy a really, really expensive computer. Money is no object. It can be a PC, of course. Maybe not even a Mac. Sorry, we're going to limit it. Money is no object. You're probably going to buy a most expensive Mac. That's an expensive place to go. But if you're going to buy a PC, and it's the most expensive PC, what is that PC designed for? Can you tell me? What's it made? Say, I think I heard it. Gaming, yeah. The most expensive PCs we buy today, they're designed to run video games. And what's the thing that we kind of measure the performance of a video game computer by? Or what is it? Screen refresh. What's it called though? The abbreviation, 3-letter abbreviation. FPS, frames per second. Yeah. So how many times in a second can I completely change the screen? And when that's what we're really driving for, these computers get expensive because that is a really expensive thing to do, is change up all the screen. And so even though for this example, what we're doing, we're only changing a few screens, but every time you say, I'm going to change what's on the screen, you're saying that's going to take time. And if I've got a process that runs through and does 1,000 of something and it's changing the screen every time, that is going to be noticeably slower. Like a few seconds slower? No. Like multiple seconds slower, maybe, depending on what you're doing, it could be a minute or 2 slower just because you're taking this time to update the screen. And so if you can avoid selecting a sheet, just refer to the sheet and get the data without selecting it, then that will make your code go a lot faster if you're kind of doing something that's repeatedly switching back between sheets. Okay, question here. Oh, there's a little trick where you said, oh, let's go ahead and talk about it now. So the question is, well, would that just be the same as turning off screen updating? Watch this. I could come up here and I could say there's actually a property of the whole application of Excel itself, application dot screen updating, and I can set that to false. When I set screen updating to false, we're saying, listen, we're going to do a bunch of stuff, here where we're popping the screen back and forth and whatever. Just don't update it. When we're done running, then update it. And the answer is, yeah, that's almost as good. Yeah. It's, not as satisfying, but it's almost as good. So it still will run a little bit faster in the way I'm about to show you, because instead of taking 2 steps, activate the sheet, get something off the active sheet, we're just saying, go get the information off the sheet. So it's going to be marginally faster, but the kind of faster we're talking about now is measured in milliseconds, not seconds or even minutes. Even if you're doing, thousands, it will be almost exactly the same. So I'm pretend we didn't talk about that yet. But if you've recorded a macro and it's doing pretty good, but it's kind of slow, that's one of the things you can do is just go at the top, write in application.screenUpdating equals false, and that will take the burden off of repainting the screen between things that you do. Now I got to tell you, do you have to turn it back to true at the end of the macro? Yeah, otherwise it won't update at all. You'll be trying to change the cell, and Excel will once it's done, it'll go back updating. It'll update. Whew. I had a student who took an internship at FedEx. Where's FedEx, Tennessee? Is that where the headquarters of FedEx is? Anyway, he got some internship, same thing, interns do, the stuff no one else wants to do. And after the first week, he was like, I really don't want to do this anymore. And it was, some kind of really repetitive task. And then he remembered back to the VBA class, and we could probably just automate this. And it was something, he recorded something, and it was this process, where it's go to this screen, then do this, and then the screen is flashing. So he actually put in his code, application.screenUpdating equals false, ran way faster. But he said he really liked to watch it work, so he turned it off. So it was just flashing around. He's running and he just let it go. And his boss walks by his cubicle while Excel is going pop, 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 pop. The screen's going crazy. His boss, what's going on in here? I just wrote a macro to, automate this process, and he's all, really? Well, tell me about it. He kind of tells him about it. Anyway, by the time of his internship, he is making presentations on this process that he's done pretty high up in the company. Like not even in his office. Like this thing has gone to other locations. And, so it turns out he got noticed, what he was doing because his screen was popping around. So it may not be that making it run faster is the ultimate goal here. So you got to think about what the goal is you're trying to accomplish. Okay. So where are we? Oh, okay. So the idea is we're now going to somehow come over here and let's figure that out. Okay, so that's going to be our first. And our whole goal today is trying to get familiar with different ways to refer to ranges. All right, so now I have a number here, and I want to refer to a particular cell. So one of the ways, and this is one we've seen so far already, I'm just going to refer to it this way, just with cells. But I've got the name of the sheet, county name. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and declare a couple of variables that will just make our code a little bit easier to write. So I can refer to this sheet through code by saying, out of the collection of all my workbooks, in parentheses and quotes, there's one called county names, dot, and then refer to the cell. Or I could kind of get that out of the way up front by saying dim, let's just call this C for county, maybe CN for county names, as a worksheet. And then I'm going to connect up that variable set CN equal to, out of all my worksheets, actually I'll do it longer, this workbook, dot worksheets, the one called county names. Is there a space? No space. So now, in my code, instead of having this whole expression to get to that particular sheet, I can just say CN dot. So after I print my little row number, I'm going to say, we'll do something with it here in a minute, but let me say CN, county names, cn dot cells, row number, the variable that I passed in. What column do I want? Column number 3. We could put the 3 there, or what else can we put in quotes? Yeah, we can put the column letter, or the column letters in quotes. All right, so that now is referring to the cell that I want. Where do I want to put it?
Is it row now or row num?
It's row num. And it may, you're sitting kind of far back, so that may be hard for you to see that. So let me darken it in for you. Should be able to see it a little better now. Is that clearer to where you are? Good. All right. Question here.
Does it matter that the R1, C1 in the option formula is formatted? Like if we're still in the alphabetical?
Okay, so here's the question. Way over here in the settings of Excel somewhere, I can say, you know what, these whole letters, they're confusing to me. I work with numbers better, and I can set this up somewhere to show this as numbers for the rows and numbers for the columns, just like I have numbers for the rows. And do I have to, if I'm going to do this like by giving it 2 row indexes, or a row index and a column index, do I have to make that setting over here? And the answer is no. So regardless of that, how you're looking at this in the workbook, there's this cells method that will refer to a particular cell. You give it the row number and the column number, or in this case, I'm giving it the column letter, and it'll just do it. Yeah, so I don't have to worry about any other setting. It always works. All right, so now I want this to go to my compare sheet, and on my compare sheet, I want this to go into B1. Okay, so I'm just going to use, you know what? We should probably set ourselves up another variable here. I'm going to call this comp as a worksheet. Set comp equal to compare. So now I can say comp dot, Now, we're using cells over here, and we've used that before. We've also used range before. Let me go ahead and use range here. You can use range to refer to a single cell range. That's always going to be B1. I want the value of that, and I'm going to say that is equal to the value of this other cell that I've identified. So now if I run place county data 5, it should put AL right into B1, and there it is, just as I was hoping it would do. Questions? Okay. So now we've got a lot more work to do. We've got one cell done, and we've got a bunch. So, but what I would like to do is I would like to connect this up. Now, the only kind of code that I can run automatically when this changes, it has to be a regular macro, no parameters involved. Because remember, as soon as I have a parameter in here, I can't just run it. I have to tell it some more information when I run it. So let's make up one that will just run this. And tell it to get the value that's sitting here in A1 and to pass that in right here. So I'm going to call this sub, I think I'm going to call it, this is called the combo box. So I'm going to call it combo, C-O-M-B-O, change, combo underscore change. The name is arbitrary, but I can have no parameters. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to call place county 5. Just all this is going to do is going to place county, but instead of always being 5, I'm going to tell it to look at, and for this one, I'm also going to want a reference to compare. This is the only time I'm going to refer to it, so I don't think I'll make a variable for it. I'm just going to get to my compare worksheet, and we'll see another way to refer to cells here. Cells, and it turns out I can provide just a single index to the cells method. I don't have to give it a column number. I don't have to give it a row and a column. I can just give it a single number. And it's really weird what it means. It happens that cell number 1 is A1. That's good. Cell number 2, B1. Cell number 3, C1. They're numbered like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 16,000 something. 16,001. Let's find out what this is. So active cell dot column. 16,384. Okay, so that is cell number 16,384. So I'm just going to select, I'm going to say cells 16,385 dot select. What cell will that select? That's A2. There it is, selected A2. So if you just provide one number, it just like numbers the cells across. That's crazy. That's what it does. So if I give it just a single number, and it will become useful if you say, oh, you know, but I'm referring to something, not all of the cells, but I could have maybe a smaller range that I'm referring to, and from there I could say dot cells 5, and even if it's, you know, not 5 wide, it'll kind of read across that smaller range and get to that other location. But the point is here is that I can provide just a single, oh, and I want to say dot value afterwards. Would work without it, but I'm going to put the dot value in there. I'm going to provide just a single number to cells, and we'll go, okay, we're just going to count across and find that one that you're after. Questions? Okay, so now that I've got this subprocedure set up, I should be able to, let me go ahead and change this to some other, here's, I don't even know how to say that, so we'll use a different one. There's a bunch of counties in Alabama I can't pronounce. Dale, I can pronounce Dale, Alabama. So I've selected Dale, Alabama, and I should be able to now to come over here and run combo change, and we should, oh, it'll still be in Alabama. So let's go to somewhere besides Alabama. I don't know, I'm down here in Montana. So now I should be able to run column change, and we should see B1 change to Montana. There it is. So I ran this, and it said, great, go look in cell A1, cell number 1, and pass that value down to place county data. That then goes into the row num. So whenever we refer to row num down here, that's how we're gonna use it. So how are we feeling so far? Show me on a scale of 0 to 5. 5 meaning I got this, let's move on, please. How many saying, whoo, this is like witchcraft. Witchcraft like a 1. Got 3s and 4s and 5s. A lot of folks not voting. Coming up to an election here in just a couple of months. So vote. All right. Oh, so now all I have to do is I now just have to convince this combo box to run this subprocedure when it changes. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to right-click this and choose Assign Macro. So it knows this is a combo box. You probably want to make a macro run when its value changes. And that's, now you, earlier we had a student who did the other kind of combo box. On that other kind of combo box, you could say, run a program when the value changes. Run a different program or a different subprocedure when the user clicks on it. Run a different one if the user moves the mouse over the top of it. There's all kinds of other things you can do. But this one's really simple. Just assign a macro, and when this changes, it'll run that macro. Oh, there's only one to choose from. That makes my life easy. How come there's only one? I've got 2 procedures over here. How come there's only one? Because of the parameter. Yeah, it can't run the one with the parameter. It can only just say this is a code to run. So I'll say OK. And now the act of changing this is going to change. It's going to, you know, update what we're doing. So here's something in Nebraska, and now we're looking at Nebraska. Question? Okay. Brief in-class exercise. Modify this code so that it also puts the county name in the right place, which would be the next row down. So B2, I want to have the county name. Should be a really simple modification of what we have here to bring in the county name right below the state abbreviation. I will give you 3 minutes. 3 minutes might be too long. All right, so let's just kind of go ahead and go through this. So the task is to also put in the county name. So right here in B1, I'm putting whatever is on the row number of my county name sheet, column C. Well, that's almost exactly what I need here. So, but instead of putting in B1, this is going to be in B2. And instead of looking in column 3, I'm going to be looking in column 2. So here I'll look for column number 2. Okay, so now if I choose a different county, yeah, I'm getting now the county and the state abbreviation. Oops. Okay, questions? How many of you did something almost just like this? How many of you did something totally different that still worked? No one? How many of you did something different that didn't work? A few of you, okay. All right, so, okay, so far so good. We have now, we're getting the right county showing. Now we got to get this data. We got a couple of different approaches to getting the data. Any thoughts on it? If you were just doing this in Excel, how would you get that data put in there? Copy, paste, transpose. I like it. That's going to be pretty good. Another thing that we could do is we could write a loop, right? Because we could do a loop that says, I gotta find the right row here, and then I gotta read these data cell by cell, and I gotta put them here cell by cell going a different direction. That's way harder than copy, paste, transpose. Now, me kind of just tell you kind of a general philosophy. This is like my philosophy of writing VBA sub-procedures, or writing Excel macros. If this is something you're writing for yourself, feel free to use the clipboard, right? You wrote the code, you know what it's doing. You're going to erase something off the clipboard. But if this is something you're writing for someone else to use, the clipboard is kind of off limits to you, because when someone puts something on the clipboard, it should be there until they take it off. And if you do copy, paste, transpose, you're going to interrupt the clipboard to move their stuff down. So if it's for you, that's okay. If it's for someone else, you probably should find a different way to do it. This is for you, so let's do it that way. It's going to be easier. But what we have to do is we have to figure out, we've got to build a reference to the right range. And so that'll be our next step. Go ahead. Oh, that's a good question. Are we just counting on our data that we're in the same order? Now, somebody already identified something. When I was asking what's interesting about this, they said, hey, this data is sorted by column A. So let's just, that's a good thing. We should check and see if that's the case. So I'm coming down here. This data ends on 3197. Let me come to my county names. It's also sorted by this column. Ends on 3190. Uh-oh. 3196. What? Am I missing a county? What's wrong? Over here in my data set, there's a heading. So my 0 starts in A2, and in my county names, my 0 starts in A1. So we're off by 1. Off by 1 is okay. Question here?
I'm also talking about the actual description of each column.
Oh, yeah, good question. Yeah, so the question said, Professor John, that was a really interesting description, but that wasn't my question. You answered some other question. It was probably also a very bright question, but please answer my question. Okay. So then the question is, are we also, should we make sure that the columns are in the same order? I've done this example for like 10 years. I don't think I've ever asked that question. I don't know the answer to it. I think it's probably in the same order. Let's just check a few of them. PST 208 and PST 200. Okay, let me come back here, data dictionary. PST 208, PST 200. So your assignment to make sure they're all in the right order. But I've checked the first two and I'm comfortable. So I think they're probably in the right order, but you're right. We should make sure that they're in the right order. We could write a program to make sure in the right order, but probably not in the, we probably could do it. If we end early, we'll write a program to make sure they're all in the right order. Won't be too hard. Actually, paste, transpose, and push it down, push it down. This is a different name, but that's okay. Equals this, equals that. Whew. True, 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 true. Okay, they're all the same. Whew. Okay. So we're trying to do a paste transpose. Now we have passed in here a row num. So if we have a row num sent in as 5, that's Baldwin. Let's go check real quick here. Baldwin is 1003. When I come to my data set, 1003 is also 5. I kind of wasn't expecting that. But ANSI 0. Was it 3? Was it 4? County names. Oh, good. It's row number 4. Thank you. Yeah, so Baldwin is on row number 4 here. 1003 is on row number 4. On my data set, 1003 is on row number 5. Yes, we are offset by 1 row. So we'll just have to make sure that we're taking that into consideration. So now what we need to do is we need to build a reference to this whole range of this data. When someone passes in, the number that says 5, we've got to get the right one. Okay, we're gonna have to adjust by 1 here, but how are we gonna refer to that whole range? Here's how we're gonna do it. One way would be to say, I want to say range. Let me just go ahead and highlight the range I'm interested in. And then I'm just gonna, at this point, I'm gonna ask for the address of the selection. So selection.address. Get rid of the $signs because they're not helpful to me, but that's it. So one way to refer to that range is to say range, and then in parentheses and quotes, the whole address that we're after. And I want to print the range A5.address. There we go. So that's a valid reference to that range. Here's another way to do it, and we'll probably try both of these when we're actually working with this. The other way is to say range. I think we previewed this, but we didn't really talk about it. Say range, and I'm going to give it two arguments. So not just one string argument that tells me the range, but 2 different arguments. And there's actually a couple of different ways that I could do this. I can give it 2 string arguments that are just like cell references. C, E, 5. And that should give me the same range. So it looks at these 2 strings and it says, oh, yeah, I can figure out that's a cell reference. I know what cell you're talking about there. Oh, so the range you're talking about starts in A5, ends in CE5, and that's the data we're talking about. So when I have 2 arguments to my range method, I could put 2 string arguments to identify those different cells. Or I can actually put references to cells in here. This is the weird part. So instead of saying A5, I'm going to say cells, row number 5, column number 1. Now, whenever we have an ordered pair that's rows and columns, one number represents the row, one number represents the columns, it is always row first and then column, which is a little bit troubling. Why? But normally, we say the column first. We say cell A6, column first, then row. But when it's an ordered pair of numbers, it's always row first and then column. So I can either put a string in here that identifies the cell, or I can put a reference to a cell here, and that should resolve that just fine and say, oh yeah, I know the range you're talking about. Okay? How are we feeling about this, folks? Different way to refer to the range. So somehow, all we get is a 5, and we've got to get the right row, or yeah, county names. That's right. So if we get a 4 sent to us, that gets us Baldwin, but we've got to go to row 5 over here. Okay. So we've got to build this expression if someone chooses 5. So how are we going to do it? Which way do we want to do it? Let's go ahead and do it. Okay, let's talk about this way. Would this be easy to do? So we do have to put the row number in, but this would just be string concatenation. This really isn't too bad. If I'm dealing with row numbers, I could like manipulate strings to come up with a string that refers to the row number. That's not too bad. Now, if I have to manipulate columns, and I know column numbers, that's difficult because I can't just drop in to this string the column number. I've got to convert that to like CE. Who wants to do that? I don't want to do that. But the row wouldn't be too bad. Let's go ahead and take that approach here. So we're assuming the data is all we're doing is changing the number. We're assuming we're going to have the same number of columns, so that's fine. So I'm going to say I'm going to set something equal to. Oh no, I'm going to copy that range. So I'm going to identify the range that is on my data set. Do I have a data set? Let's go ahead and let's make a variable here for data. Dim data as a worksheet. Set data equal to data set. Now data dot range. Okay, now the range that I'm interested in is this range right here. But every 5 here, I've got to replace with row num plus 1. So I'm going to get rid of this 5 here and just concatenate on row num plus 1. And I'll put that same expression where I have this 5. Now watch what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to highlight that 5. That's the part I want to replace. And now, like without even thinking, I'm going to put in 2 quotes, go back and put in 2 ampersands, and then put the expression in that I want. And that will kind of splice that in. What did it do? It put in that quote, and I know as soon as I terminate this string, I'm going to need to do this one as well. So I put those in to start with. Then I'm going to have to glue on something else. So I put in the 2 ampersands, and then I worked between those, and I put in the expression I wanted to replace that 5 with. So I can use the string manipulation wizardry to build the right string reference. And now I've got a reference to that range. I'm just going to go ahead and say copy. Question here.
Since row num is an integer, or like you did it as a long, but it's usually a best value, would it be more advantageous?
So the question is, you made row num a long. Would it be, are you saying to use this approach up here? Yeah. So here's another approach. We'll do it. We could do the same thing. I'm just going to go ahead and write it out. That's just one way. We're just kind of getting some different experiences here. So the other approach would be to say, I'm going to go ahead and just refer to these 2 cells individually. So one is, now this will get a little bit more wordy because I do mean also on the, actually I don't need the data here, because here I'm going to tell it those ranges are on the data sheet dot cells. Row number is going to be row num plus 1. Column number is going to be 1. It's going to start there, and it's going to end with whatever column CE is. Range CE5 dot column 83. So this is I think it's definitely longer. I've highlighted the first cell I'm talking about, row num plus 1, column 1, same row, ending in column 83. Is that what you were suggesting? I forgot who asked the question. So which way do you like better? You like the cells way better. Who agrees? Who says, you know what? I like the cells way better. Who says I like the one? Let's see. Okay, we're going to vote. We're getting you ready for November. It's coming up. So who says I like this one that we just wrote here that has these two different cells? Oh, a few of you. Maybe you should run for office. And who says, you know what? I like the string concatenation better. Well, kind of equal. We're going to have to run off election. You know, maybe we'll do that in the midterm. Okay. Well, that's funny. There's a midterm exam and midterm election. That's the same thing. Interesting. Okay. So we've copied that. Now we got to tell it where to paste. The pasting is going to be really easy. Why is the pasting going to be so easy? Because if we're doing a paste transpose, we don't have to actually build the whole range we're pasting into. We just got to tell it where to start pasting. So this is just going to get pasted into B3 or B3. So that's going to go on to compare. I'm trying to think of a different way to refer to this that would be interesting. There's a way that I almost never use to refer to cells. Let me show it to you. In square brackets, you can do it without quotes. B3 dot address. But I'm not quite sure how to put the sheet name into this. So let's try it here. Let's try compare exclamation point. Yeah. So this is a syntax that I learned how to do VBA literally for decades before I ever saw this notation. And so it never springs to mind. It's so strange to me because I would normally think, boy, that really should be in quotes. But this syntax inside those square brackets, let's let you put a direct cell reference in your VBA code and it figures out what it is. So that's referring to B3 on the compare worksheet. And I'm just going to say dot paste special. I was hoping to have a little more help here to know how to transpose because there's lots of options for paste special. I think it's just transpose equals true. But let me show you a little trick. The problem is the VBA editor, this tool that we're typing in right here, it's not quite sure what to make of this. It doesn't really know. The editor doesn't know that this is a range. The interpreter figures it out. But to get this IntelliSense help while I'm typing, the editor has to figure it out too, and the editor doesn't know. This editor doesn't quite know what to do with it. So here's a little trick. I'm just going to come up here, and I'm going to declare a little variable, dim r as a range. This editor now knows that r is a range. So now I should be able to say r dot paste special and get some help with this thing. And what do I want? I want paste special, not paste all, paste. Where's paste transpose? Did I miss it? Paste as, oh, okay, paste as, let's paste values. Sorry, this is not the first thing. So paste as values, oops. I'm gonna paste values. Where's values? Paste values, tab, comma, add, divide, multiply, no operation, comma, skip blanks, true, or false, don't skip blanks, and transpose true. Whew, that's ugly. As it turns out, that if I'm just going to refer to the arguments in this procedure that I'm calling, just by putting them in the right order, to get to transpose way out here by itself, I got to put something in for all the rest of them before it. Or tell it they could skip it, but I don't think any of these are, oh yeah, they're probably all skippable because they're in brackets. Or, and that would do it. Here's proof. I think we're, oh, this was just up here in R so I could get the syntax. Paste special. You go ahead and maximize this so we can see the whole line. So I did that little trick by making a variable that the editor would know was a range variable, so I could say r dot and get some help on this. And then I just copied and pasted what I put down here. So that should work now. I'm going to go ahead and try it, and then I'll make it so you can see the whole thing again. And then we'll take a shorter approach to it. So I'm hoping I didn't quite transpose. Shouldn't need the parentheses here. Or what did it say? Maybe I should pay attention to what it said. Object required. Okay, I'm going to try paste values. Oh, you're right. Paste special. Yeah, thank you. I had a period there. Let's make sure there's a space there because this is the first argument. Kind of surprised that worked at all. Let me delete that. Shift right arrow, shift end, shift control right arrow. There we go. There we go. Okay, so now we've dropped those values in. But there's another way to skip all those values that are coming up. And I can do it like this. Instead of putting all those values in so I can get to this true, I can actually put the name of the parameter, which was, I forgot. Oh, and now I've lost my help. Oh, erg. Was it just transpose? Space special. So I can say transpose colon equals true. Yeah, colon. It's not just transpose equals true because that would be like an assignment statement. This is an assignment. This is just telling it which parameter to go into. So we've got 4 different values that we can plug in here. Since transpose is the last one, I either have to supply the first 3 so I can put the 4th one in, or I just say, look, forget the other ones, just transpose is the one we're going to make true. And the rest will just be whatever default value you want. That should work too. Let me go ahead and check it. Comment that out and run this again. Yeah, it looks like we're in great shape. Oh my gosh, we've spent almost an hour and 15 minutes getting the first one in. Now we got to get the next one in. What are we going to have to do to make it so when I choose another one, I get another column of data? What was that? I don't really want to loop here because the comment was just make a loop. I don't really want to loop because I just want the user to come and choose it. When they choose this, put that value in and we're done. But now I want, I want one column of data here and I want another column of data here. They click again, I want another column of data here. What are we going to have to do? Talk to me in English. You don't have to use VBA. Just go ahead.
Can I have our same code, but like for each iteration, have it reference a new column?
Okay, so one possibility here is to say, all right, every time we're doing this paste or we're referring to writing these values out, we can't look at column B each time. We got to somehow figure out which column we mean. We got to like figure out. So here's what we could do. If I could find out which column has the last data in it over here, let's go ahead and take a look at this. I don't think we're going to take this approach, but I'm going to show you this because this part is really powerful. And so this is not going to end up in the example. So I want you all to kind of focus with me. If you're working on your other code for a second, stop working on your code and watch this because it's a really powerful tool. So I'm going to refer to a particular cell. Let's say I'm going to start right here just in like A3. So A3. And then I'll say dot end. We talked about this before. Dot end, and I'm going to say XL to right. Now, so it's going to be like holding control right arrow to go to this cell right here. And then I can ask for the column. And so that's column 2. Well, what if I've got more data in here? Then when I run this, it should, zip out there to column 3 and, just ran out to column 3. That's pretty good. That works pretty good. Unless, what if there's no data here to start with? Yeah, that's going to hit the way end. I don't want that. So, man, if there's no column, there's no data in column B, I got to do one thing. If there is data in column B, then I got to kind of come out here to find it. Or alternatively, instead of going to A3, I could go to XX3. And instead of going to the right, I could go to the left. And that's going to show me the last data that has, the last column that has data in it. Now, I don't really want XX3, so I'll do it this way. Cells, row number 3, column number, there's like 16,000 of them. 16 what? I don't know, but I can always ask. I can say how many cells are there? Or how many columns are there? 16,384. So what should I put in there after the 3? 16,384? I'll just plug in columns.count, and it'll calculate that every time I do it. The reason I prefer to do it this way is because, you know what? When Excel 2020 comes out, for all I know, there's going to be more than 16,000 columns. However many columns there are, go there. Go to the last column. From there, do an end to the left and report the column. And so that will tell me the last column that has data onto it. If I just add 1 onto that number, that'll tell me the column that I'm going to write to. Well, what if there's already data in column 2? That's great. I'll run this again, and it'll tell me column 3 is where the data has to go. We cannot, in the next 4 minutes, we cannot modify our code to take advantage of this great little thing we just did. But there's a better way. There's a faster way. There's a way simpler way. Can you imagine what it is? Yeah. It's not a terrible idea. It's a great idea. Just before we plug the data, let's just insert a column right here. Whoa, it's kind of wide. That's wider than I want, but if we just insert a column there, our code's ready. Watch this. It goes right in the right place. That's so easy. Let's just do that. So I'm going to come in here, and before we do anything else, well, we'll let our dim statements happen first, and we'll bind onto those sheets. That's fine. And I'm just going to say, all right, so I want to be on my compare sheet, dot columns, column number 2, dot insert. And that'll just, it just inserts a column. They're on column 2, insert a column. Now, so now we should be good, except for we're making wide columns. We'll want to bring those back in. We'll want to rein those columns under control. But now, just make as many as you want. Great. What columns do you want to, what counties do you want to compare? Just bring them on. You want to delete? We could write a button that would delete some, but I'll just highlight and delete. So the last thing that I need to do here is I just need to make it say, you know, make this a reasonable size. So here's what I'm going to do for that. I can record my, we don't have time to record it so we can see it, so I'm just going to show it to you. After I'm done plugging this data in here, I'm just going to resize column B. So again, comp columns 2 dot auto fit. I think. Let's see if that does it. So now it does make it a little bit bigger when we start. I don't really like it going bigger than that, so watch while I'll do this. Since we learned it already. Application dot screen updating equals false or flasse. And then when I'm done here down at the very end, set it back to true again. So now I don't even think we'll see it. I'm not positive, but I don't think we'll even see it kind of pop like that. It'll just kind of show in. Right. So I told it, listen, when I do this insert over here, when I do this insert right here, don't update the screen. There's no reason to update the screen until we're done. Turn off the screen updating. And then the change happens. It doesn't update the screen until we get back to screen updating is true. And then it will do it. So now I can compare these 3 counties in New Mexico a lot more easily, right? I can look, let's see, where was the one about sex? Or it must be this one right here. Yeah, total females percent, and we can see, yeah, they're all more females than men. Good place to go, I guess, if you're looking for a date. All right, questions on the code? So today's class was really looking at different ways to refer to ranges. We've seen quite a few different ones, and we built something that's kind of useful along the way. All right, thanks for coming. Class dismissed.